Questions are really funny and fickle things, right? Depending on who you ask the question, you get a different answer often. When we think about the question of who, it really depends on who we're asking. Who are you? You know, I love the children's book, Are You My Mother? We just got it for our little baby Ashlyn. And as I've been reading it to her, I've realized how much it's a really funny book because the bird comes out and doesn't know who the mother is. And so it goes off and it asks a dog and a cow and even a gold car and a steamboat. It's just hilarious. The responses that the bird gets often are like, I couldn't be your mother. How could I be your mother? I'm a dog or I'm a cow. It's just very matter of fact, right? And a lot of times that's how we feel. We respond to questions like, what makes you tick? Or, you know, who are you really? And we try and answer those questions deep down with personality tests or the Enneagram or these other things that we really seem to find meaning in. And they're helpful, right? They're sometimes really helpful. As you think about personality tests, Myers-Briggs or some of these others, like I mentioned, the Enneagram, they've really given language to things that I didn't know about myself, how I operate in the world, how I respond to conflict, how I deal with stress, what health looks like for me, maybe what some of the tendencies I have towards addictive behaviors. These are really helpful things, but they don't define who I am. And I love the way that an Enneagram teacher that I've come to really respect and learn a lot from, Suzanne Stabile, talks about how the Enneagram number that you identify with or your personality type or any of these type things help you understand your shadow self, actually. It's not the true person you are. That essence of who you are is underneath. And this number or this type or this personality is how you've coped with being hurt and being in conflict in the world. And so this number or this type that you are, that you feel like that isn't who you really are, that is how you cope in this world. And I think about that when we come to questions of who and questions of identity, is that often we're answering these questions with kind of an understanding of how I make my way in the world, but not necessarily the true essence of who we are. Even when we give a response of who we really are, I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm married, I'm a husband, I'm a Christian, I'm a follower of Jesus. Sometimes those are things that we try and tell ourselves so that we believe them just as much as we're trying to communicate that to someone else for them to believe as well. So I think with all of this, what I'm trying to get at is don't be too consumed with the answer that you give for who you are. And also, be a little bit skeptical when somebody says, this is who I am. I think about that in a political climate, right? Right now, we're supposed to be in the midst of an election process, and we're wondering who's going to be the Democratic nominee. Maybe we already know. But who's going to be somebody that I vote for in the local elections, or all these different things that are going on. I just got introduced to the Glendale City Council, and I'm kind of excited to continue being aware of what's going on in my city more so than I've ever been before. But it's really difficult for me to just read a name or to read even a platform or read even some slogans and what they stand for and really know who it is that I'm voting for. And Jesus actually identifies in some of this language. If you see his question about who do the people say that I am, he asked this to his disciples in both Matthew and Luke's gospel, and the disciples respond, some think you're John the Baptist risen from the dead, some think you're a prophet like Elijah or Isaiah or one of these other prophets or Jeremiah. And Jesus says, what about you? Who do you say that I am? And Peter gives the good confession that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God, or the Messiah. This is political language. He's anointed like David was anointed by Samuel before he was king. Anointed by God to be God's representative, to be God's king, the Savior of the world. But Jesus' followers didn't understand that. In fact, we know that because later Peter, right in that same encounter with Jesus, tries to rebuke Jesus for saying that he was going to die and be raised on the third day. Jesus predicts his death, and Peter says, no, that's not what the anointed one is going to do. That's not the person I'm following. That's not who you are, Jesus. He didn't understand who Jesus really was. And I think that's the same for us. We often think we've got it nailed. We think we know who we are. We think we know our identity. We don't. And so we come to the passage in John 21, and I just think it's amazing that it ends this way. After asking, "Do you love me?" 3 times, and having the responses, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you," Jesus says, "Feed my sheep." And then he gives the prediction of Peter's death and how he's going to die. A clear image of growing old and being led by someone else. And then he says this. Jesus said to Peter, "Follow me." I want you to hear those words again. Jesus said to Peter, "Follow me." We're following this Jesus. Just as the invitation for the disciples was when Jesus was fishing and they got the miraculous catch, and Peter said, "Go away from me, I'm a sinful man." Jesus said to him, "Follow me, and I'll make you fishers of people." And Peter didn't understand it. He didn't understand who Jesus was. Even after making the good confession that Jesus was the Christ, the Son of the living God, he didn't understand who Jesus really was. The invitation at the end of the Gospels is still that, to follow Jesus. So even if you don't know who Jesus really is in your life, maybe you don't even know who you really are in your life, the invitation still stands to root your identity in following Jesus.